The weather is really bad, Mike Poland. Welcome, one and all, to the latest Blog on the Boys Roundtable. It is Tuesday, January 16th, 2024, 8:01 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can watch our show live on any one of three platforms: the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel, the Blog on the Boys Twitch channel, or the Blog on the Boys Facebook page. You can also catch it on a rewatch at your own convenience on any one of those platforms. You can also listen to it on the Blog on the Boys podcast network. Make sure to check out blogontheboys.com, of course, for the latest and greatest in the world of Dallas Cowboys news, discussion, and general commentary, which for whatever reason we're all continuing to subject ourselves to. I say we. My name is RJ Ochoa, one of three horsemen here tonight. First up, from all the way across the pond, the proverbial ism, it is Mike Poland of UK Cowboys fame. Mike, it's great to see your bright, shining, beautiful face.
Yeah, it is. Well, you say it's 8:01. It's 2:01 here in the UK, but I'm here to support all of you and be here and a shoulder to cry on at our very darkest time.
Yeah, it does feel like the third act of the like big time movie, and you know the horrible things are starting to happen. Danny Phantom, it's you, me, and Mike tonight. Mike, you know, right before you joined, actually, before we started streaming, said I'm going to try to be as positive as I can. That's just kind of, you know, how I see things, which I really respect. It's really tough to be positive right now, Danny Phantom.
It is. In fact, I thought about just not showing up to this because the Cowboys didn't show up. So I figured, you know what's the point? No, but you know what? I mean, I know people view me as kind of a downer, but at the same time, I'm kind of the kind of person you want to be around in these type of situations too. So because I feel like, you know, as a longtime fan, the Cowboys have done this plenty of times before. So, you know, it's good to have perspective, but definitely this is a very difficult time.
Lonely Catman says in the chat, Requiem for a Team. Have either one of you seen Requiem for a Dream? Because that movie, that'll mess you up. Have you seen that film, Danny Phantom?
I have not. No.
I wouldn't advise it. That's all I'll say. I mean, that's that's a tough movie. Almost as tough as what we saw on Sunday afternoon. We're not here to rehash the particulars of the game. There's no need. The body's cold. It's in the ground or whatever we did. I don't know if y'all think that we, you know, some sort of balming or, you know, who knows what we do with this body. It is a really, really, really kind of tough place to be in. I appreciate everybody who's here in our chat and all the people who were chatting, obviously, before we got here. Mike, I guess we kind of have to just start with how depressed are you? Admittedly, though, an optimist, because you know we can compare this, and we were kind of chatting like, is this the worst playoff loss the Cowboys have endured? This does feel like a different kind of low. We've all dealt with Cowboys playoff losses in the past, but it really does seem like we are truly in the wilderness here with no real path towards any kind of guidance.
Yeah, the best way I think I can describe this is it feels like I've met this beautiful, lovely young woman, and I've just found out she's cheated on me with a guy from Wisconsin.
Okay, so particularly from Wisconsin. Okay,
yeah, particularly, yeah, because it just feels like I think there was a feel with this Cowboys team as it was moving towards the end of the season that there was a light at the end of the tunnel with a few things like the running game. Tony Pollard, CeeDee Lamb was becoming this huge offensive weapon. So everything was looking positive. You know, we had guys like Jonathan Hankins coming back and Tyler Smith coming back. So things were on the up and you kind of think, yes, this is going to be it. This will be the time. But it turns out we were cheated, that it was all a lie. And that it doesn't matter how many All-Pro and Pro Bowl players you've got on there. It turns out that you need zero, as Green Bay have shown, to beat the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, Danny, I'm going to go with a different analogy than Mike, if you'll allow me. I feel like we are in the Truman Show. Like everyone has been lying to us. Like everyone has known about our distorted reality, and on some level, we always knew, but we kind of wanted to suspend that reality. To just kind of go along, but then it just became, you know, too much. You know, the tide turned, and we kind of had to. Maybe that's what we're in the process of is paddling out to the end of the two-dimensional world as little honey squeaks her toy. and now we have to open that door to the unknown. I mean, it kind of feels like we're walking up those steps right now.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if this was just some giant facade, just some script. You almost can't script it like this because it's just you build this team up so much, and then look what kind of twist that it takes. So I think that's a great analogy. I also like Mike's too because honestly, I feel like, and I go through this every year, like when you wake up after a Cowboys playoff loss, you feel like you lost someone, or you have that feeling in the stomach, like, is this really happening? And did it really happen? And it takes me a few days of waking up before you kind of like get over it. And it does kind of feel like a breakup or losing a pet or something. I mean, it does for me because it's just that much of a kick in the stomach. It is a tough loss because the expectations were high. We all believe this will be the year that we break the divisional round curse. The stage was set, the table was set, the path was there. The Cowboys had the opportunity. Mike mentioned 9 All-Pros. I mean, what more do you want? And then the Cowboys go out there, and they didn't just lose on Wild Card Weekend. They just completely came apart. And I don't know. I kind of feel like, when Hank discovers that Walt is Heisenberg, I feel like he's like, I don't even know you. And that's what I felt like. Who are you? And that's what the Cowboys were to me. I don't even know.
Mike, before we kind of dive into tonight's subject, I think, your analogy was kind of based on a violation of trust. And I think the hardest thing to reckon with is they had home field advantage. Dak was playing out of his mind. CD was playing out of his mind. Micah Parsons exists. I mean, if it can't happen then, I mean, what more would they need? I mean, it's impossible to conceive.
Yeah, it's like, so they go, Green Bay come out and start, and they come right out of the gate, and they score, and you go, okay, and people are panicking straight away, and I'm like, it's okay, don't panic, and then all of a sudden, Micah Parsons gets a holding call, and I'm like, ooh, okay, here we go. Here's that little ray of sunlight we're hoping for. This has just happened. It's taken us 11 weeks for this to happen. Maybe there's something different happening in this game. And then, it doesn't become the case. And it just, everything snowballs. And Brandon Aubrey misses an extra point. And you're just like, could things get any worse right now? As this whole thing is falling apart and reeling on us. And you get to halftime and you're just like wondering, like, you're just like, here it is again. It's all happening again. And I'm trying to be the positive guy. But right now, when you look at that, you're like, I really can't be the positive guy. I'm trying to be. I'm trying to do my thing and do as much as I can, but I don't know how.
You're Jon Snow right now. I mean, just taking on the whole army, Mike. Really,
yeah.
It's
With
a
that
tough
whole
scene.
horde.
It should come as no surprise that the theme of tonight is just kind of general sadness, anger, frustration, whatever you want to call it. In fact, Tony Catalina was scheduled to be our fourth tonight. He couldn't make it after all, but he came up with the title. He's the first person to ever come up with this. Tony Catalina is Danny, calling tonight the airing of grievances. Nobody has ever referred to this in any semblance of pop culture. So tonight we're each going to air out a few different grievances. There are, though, only 2 of you. And if you recall, Danny and Mike, last time it was just the 3 of us. I was going to have the chat serve as a third option to kind of pick up points, but then Paul showed up, all handsome with that beautiful baritone voice and ruined all that. But chat, we have to do something positive. We have to find some glimmer of light. So tonight it is Mike against Danny against the chat. Tonight is your night, chat, to compete. I will be handing out points to you. You will be handing out points to the roundtablers. It will be a democratic process, as it always is. So we will see who comes out on top, because if somebody's going to get a win, it's at the very least going to happen here on the Blog on the Boys Roundtable. Danny, are you scared of the chat?
You know what? I'm scared of everything, to be quite honest. I have no confidence in what's going to happen, but I just say, bring it. Let's see what they got. I mean, who knows what can go down. So, I mean, I'm curious to see if they can show up here and, when called upon.
Well, Kevin took away 5 points in the chat, says we talked ourselves into believing in the Cowboys this year. So it could be that kind of night. Thank you to Dimsum05 for the super chats. His 2024 schedule, all away games, all playoff teams. Not every single away game, but yeah, I mean, Cowboys have a first place schedule now. That is part of the break of everything that happened. Let's get to the airing of grievances. Danny Phantom. I don't know if you've been waiting to tee off on Mike McCarthy. I don't know if you even have the spirit to tee off on Mike McCarthy after what happened, but what is your first grievance and why?
Well, it's got to be Mike McCarthy. I mean, I always can find room to have something to say, but this isn't one of those where I'm like, what did I tell you, sort of thing, because for months, with you guys, I've been wanting to believe in this guy. And there's a lot of things that he does do that I think he deserves credit for, and that I'm happy about. But as a whole, and here's the thing: so should the Cowboys stick it out with Mike McCarthy? If that's like a question you're asking me, let's just put things on the table. He works well with the Joneses. He manages the health of his players really well. He stays in his lane. He lets the draft people do the draft. I have no doubts that this team would again return with a winning record, maybe even go 12-5 again. I don't even doubt that. He keeps the engine running. He can get you to the airport on time, but are you really going anywhere? And this is where I say no. I have never witnessed a more unprepared team than what I saw on Sunday. He creates this heightened sense of ability, an overconfident locker room instead of that hungry, something to prove group. Who is always fighting. I mean, every season we're left wondering, how did it all go wrong? And, I thought we were better than this. We're not, though. We're a good football team, but we lack that edge to be great. We can't stop ourselves from committing penalties. I mean, it's just again and again. McCarthy, to me, is a net negative when it comes to clock management and in-game situations. And I felt like Sunday that the team was just completely shell-shocked from what was going on, and they just collapsed. So, even in 2016, we look at it when they got down to the Packers 21-3. I mean, those guys kept fighting. They got back in it. They tied the game. They lost, but they kept fighting. But there was absolutely no fight in McCarthy's Cowboys on Sunday.
Mike, my dad likes to say 1-0 crap wipes out a million attaboys. And he words it a little bit differently, but this is a family show. And Mike had built up a lot of goodwill, I think, an objective, goodwill. But I mean, now the totality of things is much more difficult to defend because now it's, you're 1-3 in the playoffs, and that one win was against a below 500 team. And Danny, you brought up how the Cowboys still fought when they were down against the Packers. That was Mike McCarthy's Packers that left the door open, for the Cowboys to fight and scratch and claw back. And even 2 years prior to that, they blew that big lead in the NFC Championship game in Seattle after Des caught it. So, Mike, I mean, look, I have been Team McCarthy through and through and through and through and through. And I've always attested that if, crap hit the fan, in the playoffs, that, I reserve the right to change my mind. I have to say I have. I mean, how can you come here, Mike, maybe you're about to, and say that he should return as the team's head coach this next season?
Yeah, it's difficult because you've got, on the one hand, you've got the Mike McCarthy of the regular season in the last 2 years, 37 wins. That is the second most wins for a head coach in that time. So you go, that's insane, but then you kind of stop then in, like you say, you go, but in the playoffs, he's 1-3. So there seems to be that when it matters most and when it's the highest, how can you defend Mike McCarthy at this stage when the roster as good as it's been? And even when you think of last year, of how good the roster was good then. And you get to the playoffs and fall apart and break apart. And it seems to be a pressure thing. It's really strange. It's odd to watch that it's not just the playoffs. Like, look at Arizona, that when they are not the underdogs, when they're the guys that are supposed to win, when they're the guys who are the favorites to win, when they're like +7 or more to win, they don't. they can't win. It seems to be when they're the underdog, they perform best, and it's really odd to watch. And that's my biggest grievance so far is the pressure thing. It's like, why is it that when you're under pressure, you cannot perform? And that's the weirdest part. I can't understand. I can't get my head around it.
I mean, some people want to attribute it to the Joneses, and I don't think that's unfair.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you could argue it's the weight of the drought and the franchise and the pressure associated with that. I don't think it's impossible to say it's just horrible coincidence. I mean, you know what I mean? Like it really could just be that. I mean, it's really difficult to fathom because you mentioned the pressure thing is your biggest grievance, Mike. I do not want to go down this road, and in that, like, I wish we didn't have to, but we do have to. No, because Counting Buck says you can make the same argument for Dak. I love Dak. We all love Dak. And I maintain that he is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And I recognize how frustrating that is for people to hear right now. But Danny, I mean, you can pile it up in the regular season. Like it is, the sample size is massive at this point for Dak Prescott. Maybe not massive, but it is significant. It is enough to draw a legitimate conclusion from that he kind of folds in these games. And you can call it whatever you want. And that's so frustrating because he has all of the opportunity in front of him, the opportunity of control. And yeah, I mean, we can sit here and talk about all these, other factors that are hindering him, but Dak deserves an enormous amount of blame here.
He does. And it's hard too, because, and this is one thing when I try to be careful when I spread out my criticism, because it's very, I mean, you have to look at everything. And then this is where with Dak Prescott, and I know he's so defiant, what people think of him is just crazy different,
Yeah, there's no true like rational opinions on Dak, right?
Yeah, and I think that I don't want to like single groups up. I think the smarter heads will tell you that he's a good quarterback, and the Cowboys are lucky to have him, and all that. And that to me, there's no doubt about that. But yeah, I mean, you look at this game, Dak was terrible. He was making poor decisions. I don't know what was going on exactly with the offense as a whole, as far as play calling, CeeDee Lamb, Dak, the whole thing was just weird. And I'm sure there's some shared blame everywhere. But I can safely say that Prescott wasn't making good reads, wasn't making good decisions. Maybe he was just sometimes just like, I'm just going to force it. I mean, you saw, 2 picks, and both of those were basic. One was a touchdown, the other set up a touchdown. I mean, it was just very damaging. And I've said before that when it comes to Dak, and I think he gets let off the hook way too much because we all love him and we should. But when it comes to playoff time, he has not like played great and the Cowboys still lost. There's always in the 49er games too, he'll make one of those throws that, he'll make a bad read, it gets picked or something. He doesn't make those plays. So he hasn't like lifted us up. So while he hasn't been the blame in the past for us losing, he hasn't been the reason too. In those when we've had struggles, but on Sunday he was definitely. If you were to throw the people in there, and you have a limited choices, Prescott's name goes in there because he deserves it.
Kevin says the rational opinion is he's a good quarterback, top 10, and it's going to set us back several years if we move on from him. And Mike, I think the three of us at least agree, and a lot of people in the chat do, that it's a fine decision to have Dak Prescott be a part of the Cowboys. But I mean, I've reached a point I think we all have where it is fair to understand why it would be maddening. I mean, they're 8 years in. I mean, like at this point they are betting against history. I mean, Matt Ryan, Peyton Manning. I mean, there are very, very few exceptions to the rule in terms of players who finally broke through this late in their careers. And again, where it feels like we're stuck in purgatory, Mike, is there are objective reasons to believe in him. There are objective reasons to be incredibly concerned as well.
Yeah, and again, I think with Dak, the issue is going back to, and I agree with what Danny says, that he isn't the sole reason the Cowboys lost, but he is a reason. But with Dak, again, when we talk about as I say, biggest grievance is pressure. I think that is what's on Dak's shoulders the most. He is the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. He's got to take that pressure on. He's shown he can do it, but he's got this ginormous gorilla over his back right now, which is the playoffs. And I think once you get to the playoffs, he feels that pressure even more. He knows in the background there's stories of Dak can't perform when it matters most, can't perform in the big game, can't perform in the playoffs. And then you get to the playoffs, you see a guy who is first in the NFL in the regular season in touchdowns, gets to the playoffs, and you see this happen. And the only thing I can attribute to the reason why that performance happens is that the pressure is just too much, that he needs to be able to shake this giant gorilla off his shoulders, off his back, and he just can't. The moment now is too enormous for him.
Danny, I really hate, I think all these comments are fair. This comment from Hillary Molly Vegas says, in big games, they wet the bed. San Francisco Bills playoffs. They bully the bad teams and tie or win against mediocre teams. It's weird when they have so many Pro Bowlers on their team. Same for Dak. I love Dak, so that sucks. Like, they literally breathed life into all these narratives, right? Like all these things that we tend to roll our eyes at, like, oh, because again, that does seem like a simplistic way of looking at things on the surface, but like, how can you argue against that now? I mean, it does look like this season they just beat all the crummy or average teams, and anytime they faced, either to Mike's point, any kind of adversity in terms of being heavy favorites or going up against an opportunity to prove themselves, they couldn't, and they just survived longer than Philadelphia to win the NFC East.
Yeah, and it's actually sad too, and I've actually tried to avoid this, and because you always want to look at things and try to make the best decision with the information you have, and I know that's always been there, and that statement that we just saw is mostly true. There's some exceptions where we get some wins and good teams, but it's mostly true. But I'm trying to ignore it. I don't want to believe it, and I want to believe this team. There's other things. I'll even go as far as saying, hey, they're better on their own home field turf than they are in grass, because right. I can draw a correlation there. But look what happened. There's that AT&T there. It's like, so this narrative actually holds the most water lately. It's just that we aren't good against good teams. I feel like those teams are just they have a stronger mentality. They're ready to go. They have something to prove. And they come out there and they smack us. And the Cowboys, they feel they're not anyone's underdogs, is what they'll say. And they believe in themselves, and they do not have that same sense of urgency to prove themselves. And that's why I feel like when it comes to those good teams, they beat us because they just have that edge. The Cowboys don't. And it's very frustrating when we can only beat the bad teams. Because I tell you what, 2024 schedule, there's a lot of good teams on our schedule. So that we're in trouble if this continues to hold true.
My grievance, to get to my first one, I don't think it's a shock. Dan Quinn. I've been coming for Danny Q, not Danny Phantom, all season long, really. And the more I've thought about this, more specifically in the aftermath of Sunday, I think Dan is an example of the worst part of the way the Joneses go about building their roster. They're bargain bin hunting, right? Like we'll take these damaged goods for whatever reason, whether this player had an injury or this player had a suspension, this player, had a positive test or whatever. That's why they fell. We're getting second round value in the fifth round. And they thought that they were getting, and they did, to be very clear, they thought they were getting this like head coach in waiting in Dan Quinn. And again, it looked like that for the better part of 2 years. And I would offer that a big reason for that was Micah Parsons playing at an elite level and kind of carrying things. But and I don't want to act like McCarthy and Dak Prescott don't deserve their fair share of the blame. I mean, this is just, again, we're all airing out grievances here. But I thought Clayton had this great point. And this was kind of clicked it all for me. We all bought into the Dan Quinn hype and thought we were getting a diamond. I mean, this to me is the same thing as Henry Melton or, Nolan Carroll. Not quite that dramatic, but like, oh man, we're really Rolando McClain. Like, we're getting this big time star. And in reality, and Danny, you wrote about this today on Tuesday at Blog on the Boys. I find it to be amazing how Dan Quinn's former disciples seem to hate him. Seem to revel in humiliating him. Kyle Shanahan today had a quip about how, oh yeah, we started working on the Packers in the second quarter, because effectively saying like they blasted the Cowboys so badly. I wonder if they they thought at the time, again, my assumption here, when they were working for him, like, man, we can coach circles around this dude, and they can. Like, we have the worst one. Like, of all that group, we have the worst bill of goods, Danny Phantom. And again, I don't say that to say like Dan sucks, but I mean, man, he really got by on reputation this whole season.
Yeah. So the thing here is, I mean, what happened on Sunday was just horrendous, and I won't even waste words trying to defend Dan Quinn for that, because I mean, just everything about it was just so bad. I mean, that his players did not know what coverages they're supposed to be in. They're all turned around. It was just from top to bottom. It was dreadful. And it was almost like, I don't even recognize you. This isn't who they've been. We have to admit this. This is not who they've been. The Cowboys, the reason that I'm so high on Quinn is because, and I've said this all year, is I don't think this is a very good Cowboys defense. I think they are fine, but I do think
that's the one thing I would, and I got that tweet a lot when because I've been airing my grievances out. I got all these tweets that are like, oh, we can't hold Dan Quinn responsible for like the poor play of the linebackers. The linebacker group that Dan Quinn was like, I'm good with Marquise Bell. I'm good converting all these safeties. Like, Dan Quinn made that bet. I'm fine giving him a pass for Trayvon Diggs getting hurt and things like that. But I mean, Dan Quinn went about this with small linebackers. That was his
absolutely
vision.
No, absolutely, and he doesn't get a pass for this. So the fact that they're a nickel team when they don't have linebackers, absolutely, that's on him. Terrible idea, and the Cowboys they paid dearly for it, but it doesn't change the fact that he does get good things out of players. The Cowboys don't have Deron Bland is not an All-Pro cornerback, despite what they tell you. He's not, and the Cowboys don't. Their defense is not filled with high-level talent players. So I do appreciate what Dan Quinn does and what he's done. The Cowboys defense as a whole, they're top 5 in DVOA 3 straight seasons. This is not some fabricated my own opinion about how good they are. The Cowboys defense,
they're the same offensively too. I mean, for the most part.
But closely. Yeah, right. And so there's issues there too. But what I'm saying is, we can't. If people are judging Dan Quinn by this one game, that's wrong. If people are judging Dan Quinn by just these other stats, that's wrong too. The whole thing has to be taken into account. Now, here's the thing: I don't feel about Dan Quinn as I once did. I grow. There's a moving average with everything.
Right.
You evolve. So I have my own concerns when it comes to Dan Quinn too. So I'm not going to sit there and say, well, guys, come on, just give him a pass and stuff. Let's make him our head coach or something. You're not going to hear that from me. But at the same time, you have to look at everything. And the Cowboys, they did make a lot of improvements. I mean, you've been a rep following this team a long time, RJ. I mean, we remember when the defense were a bunch of guys we didn't even know what their names were. So,
Henry Melton, I just said his name. Wow.
No, we know who Henry Melton is. I'm talking about guys even worse than that. I mean,
right. George Selvey, Jeremy Mincy.
The 8 and 8 years. The 8 and 8 years. I mean, the defense was just garbage. So that's why I'm just really appreciative of what he is able to do. But there's work that needs to be done. The Cowboys have issues, and the coaching staff, there's issues with, and it's on both sides of the ball.
Mike, your thoughts on Dan Quinn? But to set you up, Kevin says it just feels like a lot of the blemishes on Dan Quinn's squad were overlooked way too long. Takeaways, while huge, mask a lot of other issues. And I don't want to act like generating takeaways is like a flaw of Dan Quinn. That's it's an incredible thing. But I think you can make an argument, certainly with the benefit of hindsight, that like they were pretty lucky. They had, Trayvon Diggs had this amazing year in 2021. Deron Bland, to Danny's point, had this amazing year. Dan Quinn deserves credit for that. But like those takeaways otherwise did, change things. I mean, even like I think about the Patriots game in 2021, Mike. I mean, Trayvon Diggs has the pick 6, but then they immediately give up the 75-yard touchdown to Kendrick Bourne. I mean, so, they have been kind of hit or miss as a group.
Yeah. For me, Dan Quinn was my biggest one. When you said it straight away, I was like, oh, RJ stolen this from me. Because Dan Quinn in that playoff game, going to the pressure thing, I don't want to keep back into that again, but we've seen Dan Quinn as a coach in the playoffs defensively fall apart. Look at the Super Bowl against the Patriots. They've got a huge lead. The defense flumps, and I know it's Tom Brady and all the rest of it, but you've got proof again of being able to take a team into the playoffs, to go down that road and fall and squander defensively straight away. And I think what you've seen with Dan Quinn is what you see all the time, is that he has this idea in his head of how he wants the defense to look and refuses to change. And that's what you've seen in that game. He refused to move from the scheme he's come into the game with. And you're screaming, going, this isn't the Dallas Cowboys defense. This isn't how you've defended all season. Why all of a sudden now are you doing it this way? Are you going heavy zone and allowing all this to happen? It baffles. It literally baffles the mind. And I think one of the things he was hoping for was at some point during the game, there would be a break, like a fumble or an interception. And that, coming full circle to your question. Right. And I think that is what he was pushing for. The issue is that Jordan Love, historically this season, hadn't thrown that many interceptions. So I don't know what he was waiting for. I don't know why he held there. And I think, for me, the only reason why he held in that cover 2 shell for as long as he did on deep zone was he was just hoping that somebody was going to make a play on the ball.
Okay, I'm going to bring up a question. So it's a question as to whether, y'all have a grievance on this, because I did our post-game show, which was filled with, I don't think I told either of you, we had a lot of Packers fans. We had a lot of Eagles fans. We had a lot of Niners fans. It was a really sad day. It was a tough time. My voice is obviously a little bit broken up because of it. This is my cross to bear. That being said, there are a lot of people, Danny, who are and this happens, right? Like, when you're having success, everybody's cool with everything you do. Everything you touch turns to gold. You can make t-shirts with all sorts of slogans. People are kind of fed up with Micah Parsons, Danny. And people now you're seeing people say, like, oh man, why does he have this podcast? Like, and you don't have to offer a take on that, but people did feel like Micah Parsons was really small in perhaps the biggest game of his career. And in fact, what was the exact quote that he said last week? Like he was going to be phenomenal or legendary, whatever. Like Micah says that a lot. I like to point out that last year when the Cowboys lost to the Packers, Micah said after, if Dak ever gives me a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter, I'm never going to squander it again. And they literally did it like 2 weeks later against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Micah, again, was kind of absent in this game.
You know what? This is one that I won't stand for this. Here's the thing. All the Micah hate's got to stop. Micah Parsons is one of our best players on the team. I don't care about the podcast or what he says. If he goes out there and says it's not going to happen again, and it does, what? The guy's one person. Okay, are you disappointed with Micah Parsons' play? If the answer is yes, it's because you have elevated it too high. Because Micah Parsons goes out there and plays extremely well. He's he wins the pass rush win weight more than anyone in the league. 3 straight years. Nobody's better than this guy. This guy is incredible. The Packers did a fantastic job blocking. Those guys are fantastic blockers, by the way. They're more athletic than I realized. They're like running around and just protecting Love. Love's dancing. They did a fantastic job. And the Cowboys could not bring the pressure. And that's where things started to fall apart for Dan Quinn, because you can't bring the pressure. Now you got to start the blitz, and then Love would just tear you up. But Micah, we got to back off with Micah Parsons. Stop with it. It's if we want to pick him out to be mad at him, that's wrong. He's an incredible talent. If you just expect more of him and like he's going to just be the whole defense, then that's on you for thinking that way. I don't know what people are saying. I think it's just nonsense to me. He's an incredible player. He's not out there going out there and writing checks that he's not cashing. I don't care that he thinks that he believes that he's going to do these things fine, but he goes out there and plays really hard. It's not like one of the other players to where it's like, where did he go? Well, when he's missing it, it's because he's being held or double teamed or stuff. If you're wanting him to get sacks through there, then you're expecting too much from him. Micah's been fine. Everybody just needs to slow the roll.
Mike, the chat is kind of split on Danny. He's got a lot of like, good job. I agree with you, but he's also got a lot of like, no, Micah didn't show up. So break the tie for us. How do you feel?
Okay, that's very, very easy. I agree. Micah Parsons, hugely talented, but he is what I think everyone will agree on is that he just needs to drop the off-field stuff, mostly on social media. Just do it. Just for now, forget it, drop it, concentrate on just Dallas Cowboys football, and we'll all be happy.
Yeah, I mean, I do think Micah is like, again, I think there's some legitimate claim to saying you no-showed or however you want to term it. But the fact that people are now coming for Micah is representative of like where we're at. Like nobody is safe. Like there's even CeeDee Lamb. I mean, like CeeDee was a stock down for me. I mean, Danny, like I love CeeDee and he might be the best player on the team. Again, no disrespect to Micah Parsons, but like you can't be upset and morose, in the first 5 minutes of a playoff game. Like that set the tone for what was a very awkward and clunky overall offensive experience.
Yeah, and I really wish I knew what was going on there because, and we know that CD's not a diva. We've seen him
Right.
upset a couple times, and I think that when we look at those situations, we're probably Team CD because he's got a good point, and then things get better, and there's no reason CD shouldn't be involved. I don't know what's going on. I tend to, because of what I've seen with CD, I give him the benefit of the doubt. I would blame McCarthy over him. I blame Dak over him. I feel like I don't.
Did you
I
blame
don't know
Mike over CD?
Who?
Mike Poland.
Oh, it's kind of tough. I don't know. I've got no reason to not trust Mike Poland. So, but I will say this, kind of and this loops into the Micah thing too. Is fans we're really emotional right now. We just want to blame everybody. We'll blame our grandma, because it's just where our emotions are. So I think that we tend to just overreact and overblame. But you really you need to look at, because we're going to come back here next year and talk about how Micah's defensive player of the year. He's the best guy out there. And it's the same guy that we're talking about right now, but we're just mad. So we just got to stop with that. And same thing with CeeDee Lamb too. It's phenomenal season. But I don't know what happened. I know that when the offense started to figure things out and they started to take a more mesh stuff over the smaller stuff, they were moving the ball and CeeDee Lamb suddenly was a factor again. But early on, they were just not in sync with each other, and everything was just out of order with the Cowboys offense. So I can't explain that, but nobody should be hating on CD. Nobody should be hating on Micah.
Okay, so this is an update on the score at the moment for anyone who joined in late because we only have 2 competitors. The chat has served as our third, kind of roundtabler for the night. Mike Poland, you are in the lead with 81 points. Danny, you are tied with the chat, 79 points apiece. Here's what we're going to do. Final kind of topic in the chat. I'm going to have each of you kind of comment answers, and you're all going to have to pick one to represent yourselves. So if person X comments and all of you like it, you're going to say, yeah, person X, choose that one, choose that. Person X speaks on behalf of us. So the prompt for this final portion, Danny, you will go first. You can change one thing within reason. All right, so chat, please keep that in mind. I'm giving you a magic wand. You have one wish. I'm the genie. You get one thing. You have to tell me what you would change and how you would solve it. So as an example, I would get rid of Mike McCarthy. I would bring in Bill Belichick. Again, purely an example. You could do whatever you want. I would restructure Dak Prescott. I would whatever. I mean, again, it could be whatever you want. You have to provide the situation you're addressing and the solution within the realm of practicality. So it can't be I would cut Dak and sign Tom Brady out of retirement. Again, everybody understand the rules? We're good? Okay. Danny, you're one thing that you would do right now to fix the Cowboys.
So I would fire Mike McCarthy. I would fire everybody. I would bring in a new young head coach. Let him hire.
You got to give us a name. Like you got to give me the name tonight.
Can I pick my head coach?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Come on, welcome to the question. I mean,
I'll take Ben Johnson from the Lions.
Okay.
I'll just take the top one. Give me a young offensive-minded coach. It could be, it could be Bobby Slowick too. But Ben Johnson, I'll take him if I get to pick. Young offensive mind. Let him pick his staff. Let Jerry Jones give for the first time ever. Not give him a partial coaching staff. Let him do it his way. Jerry's still going to do Jerry things. We know that they're going to build a roster that those are going to happen, but give us a fresh start, a new young offensive coach. Let's follow the trend that successful teams have had, and let's go about it this way rather than this old way of just constantly partial coaches here. You get this coordinator. No, you got to take Kellen. No, you got to take Callahan here. Dan Quinn's coming, and just no. Give the head coach his coaching staff, and let's build this team the way it's supposed to.
Okay, so your offering is get rid of Mike McCarthy. That's a very popular one. It's in the chat, as you can imagine. But your specific solution is Ben Johnson, and more specifically, whatever Ben Johnson wants. And
yes,
I think you would agree that Mike McCarthy was saddled improperly in that respect. I mean,
your
offensive coordinator. And to your point, just so everyone's aware, because we have some younger fans, that dates all the way back to the last coach who truly was able to outfit his staff the way he wanted to was Bill Parcells.
Yeah, right. It's a long time.
Yeah, that was, and his last year with the Cowboys was in 2006. This, culture of, I don't want to call it nepotism, but favoritism or whatever.
It's meddling is what it is. You hire Wade Phillips, but you get Jason Garrett. Just keeps going. And
again, for anyone who's unaware, 17 years ago, the Cowboys hired Jason Garrett to be their offensive coordinator before hiring a head coach. So he was always the kind of head coach in waiting. And then obviously Kellen Moore, et cetera, joined the staff and was retained when Mike McCarthy took over, which is the point you're talking about here. So Mike Poland, your offerings before we pick the chat. Chat, please let us know whose comment you support the most. Mike, you're up first.
All right. I would have said coach too. I was going.
You can double up answers here, Mike. This is your answer.
Okay, so I'll double the answer and say that, and I'll say I don't want Bill Belichick. I just think, not to go against you, RJ. Yeah, you're my brother.
It was hypothetical. I mean, I am kind of in on it a little bit, but I'll explain when it's my turn. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just think the character. Can you imagine Bill Belichick and Jerry Jones together? That is a clash. I think I quite like the idea of Vrabel, and I know what people are going to say, and he does draft poorly, but he doesn't have to worry about the draft. Like, as a game caller, he's really good, but he just drafts bad teams. Well, the Cowboys have just made a big deal with Will McClay to keep him in the building. There's your answer to the draft. So you're going to have the best of Vrabel and not have the worst parts of him. The other side that I was thinking of is that would help this team a lot. I think would just be another stud wide receiver opposite CeeDee Lamb. So not everything is funneling through CeeDee in that sense, because you've seen in that game that if CeeDee has a bad game, the offense has a bad game. So to help the offense, have another guy who's next to him. Like we used to have the big three, like when you go back to the Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and you have Michael Gallup back then, who, by the way, had a massive game in the playoffs. But just randomly, just goes to show you how crazy that game was. He went over 100 yards for the first time in like 2 seasons. But you have the big. So when it's like that, you don't have to have everything funneled through CeeDee Lamb, which helps the offense massively. But yeah, my first answer would have been get Vrabel. My second answer is another wide receiver beyond what CeeDee Lamb is.
That's, definitely an interesting thought. And it's a shame that Brandon Cooks couldn't fully live up to it in the playoffs, because it seemed like he was on track for that. By the way, L2K Warshades says blogging the boys is the most well-constructed part of the Dallas Cowboys. So, hey, good for us. Okay, so my answer to buy the chat a little bit more time. And I think we have a preferred answer from the chat. And I talked about this on the NFC East mixtape, which will come out on Wednesday. I would normally think the idea of Bill Belichick is dumb. And to be clear, my answer is move on from Mike McCarthy. But I agree with your tangential element, Danny. Like, move on 100%. Like,
you want to move on from Mike McCarthy?
That's my answer. Yeah, like the water has to go somewhere here. You can't move on from the quarterback. We've outlined the financial part of that, many different times, and we'll have to talk about it a lot in the coming months. Like, you have to do something. Like, you can't live in this purgatory. You can't. Like, I mean, I respect Mike McCarthy greatly and think what he's done is tremendous, but like there's a clear ceiling on it. And he was supposed to be the difference maker. He was supposed to be the person that took you past the divisional round. He has 1 playoff win in 4 years. Like, forget the like divisional round weight or shadow. I mean, like, if any coach had 1 playoff win in 4 years on any team, that team would be talking about moving on, unless it was that 4th year that the playoff win came in. You get my point. So, I mean, you mentioned it, Danny, like data changes, information changes. I've had Mike McCarthy's back, but like this is too irrecoverable in my mind. And I mean, they might bring him back, and I think that would be a mistake unless you are truly, and I would disagree with this, but if you're like, we're going to have Mike go at this in a contract year, we're not going to extend Dak, we're going to eat the $60 million. We're just going to let these dudes try to shock the world in 2024. And if they do, cool. I mean, I would disagree with that vehemently, but I mean, whatever. There would be a semblance of logic in that. But so my answer is move on from Mike McCarthy. And I'm down. Like, living within that, my preferred option is Bill Belichick. And again, I normally think stuff like this is hokey and silly, but like, we've tried it all. Like, you know what I mean? how could this, this is the stupidest thing we can think of. You know what I mean? Like, I recognize there's a lot of logic in both of your answers in Mike Vrabel and Ben Johnson, but like, if the greatest coach of all time with the most cachet to swing around in front of Jerry Jones can't do this, even if he is past his prime, then at that point we, at least we can accept it, right? Like if Bill Belichick fails here, we can reach a different point of acceptance that we're not at right now. And there was a comment from somebody that I've already missed at this point, but I recognize that Bill Belichick has his own sense of favoritism and nepotism with his assistants. Do it the Belichick way. Like, I sign me up for that. But if you want to go the Harbaugh way, like, they're somewhat interchangeable to me. Like, I just want that cunning, shrewd dude who's had a lot of success. I'm down with either one of those. It's a coin flip for me at this point.
So I want to make a quick comment about Belichick or Harbaugh, which I think are both really good coaches. I am anti those as far. I don't think that would be smart. I want to say a couple things. First off, whenever you're getting a retread, even if it's Bill Belichick, there's always the risk. I mean,
look at Mike McCarthy.
Look at Mike McCarthy, for example. But here's the thing that I do not like. One of the things that Bill Belichick he's a Hall of Fame coach, and even Harbaugh too is really good, is they build teams. The one thing the Cowboys do well is their roster building, in my opinion. See, Belichick, if he comes in there and starts and messes with the one thing the Cowboys do well, because Belichick has not drafted well recently. That's why Patriots, they're suffering right now. So there's part of me that says, yeah, you know what? He could make Jerry unlike Jerry. He's the one guy, the Parcells, the Jimmy Johnsons type mentality that says, I'm the man. And Jerry, if he can just somehow let go of that, maybe it works. But there's also the possibility that he's just, he might be fading. It just might not be his time anymore. He could be on the downswing, and it could be into a hot mess. So I do not want to go that route for that reason, but I just wanted to put that out there.
I will agree with you, Danny. Like, in a perfect world, and Mike, to set you up here, in a perfect world, I'd have my cake and eat it too, which is an expression I think is stupid. Bill Belichick would coach, Will McClay would obviously handle personnel and all those sorts of things. But we're at the point where, again, Mike McCarthy deserves kind of the lion's share of the blame here, but like, Will McClay isn't infallible. You know what I mean? Like, we're coming out. Part of the reason this season went the way it did is, like, name the rookie that like contributed to their success. Brandon Aubrey. You know what I mean? Like, again, I'm not trying to say Will McClay sucks by any stretch of the imagination, but like, do it the Belichick way. Like, Will McClay is malleable for me in that sense. I'm willing to explore. Like, I'm not going to thumb my nose at something just because, we kind of like that Will McClay doesn't miss on every second round draft pick, that he ever executes. So again, I don't mean to be ungrateful for Will McClay, but that's just kind of my general thoughts on that. Mike.
Yeah, all I was going to say is that for all the talk that we're having on what coaches we would like to see, I just think strap in and hold on, cause I don't think Mike McCarthy, and this is like not my decision, what I believe will happen isn't going to go anywhere, because we have seen how almost to the detriment of the Cowboys, sort of their next following seasons that happen, is that Jerry Jones and the front office won't move very often off their head coaches. They will sit and almost be overly patient. Like, look at Jason Garrett. You can go through the list of head coaches where you're like, this guy should have gone way before, and they don't. They've held on. So I actually think that Mike McCarthy will still be the head coach next year. What happens beyond that, I don't know, because of obviously the contract and how that all ends. But I don't think he goes any. I think he will stay. That Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones, that whole crew will just be like, let's hold on, let's just see one more year, because we have history of him willing to be patient.
All fine and interesting candidates, wouldn't you say, Danny?
Yeah, I want to just make one quick point on what Mike said. Is I don't think Jerry's as patient as we think, because I'll tell you what, he declined to comment about what he might do. I think Jerry is extremely disappointed with what happened, and I don't think even he expected it to unfold the way it did. I think that there's going to be some serious consideration going on, some seriously gut checks within the organization, like what they need to do to make this better, because I don't know if they want to sit here another year and let McCarthy go through the motions and we're going to feel good again and then roll the dice in the playoffs and then go through this. I don't know if they're going to be willing to do that. They may be, but I do think there's going to be some serious conversations about what's best for this team and some serious doubt in Mike McCarthy.
The chat seemed to vote most for Kevin's comment in terms of thing you could do. Kevin simply said Harbaugh, which I think if we extrapolate clearly means move on from Mike McCarthy, bring in Jim Harbaugh, which, as I mentioned, I'm fine with. He's kind of in that group for me. Mike Vrabel's kind of like a distant cousin of that overall disposition, Mike. So, I mean, I'm kind of with you in that particular sense. And I obviously, am down with this particular, disposition. So well done, Kevin. Well done, chat, for kind of agreeing with them. But the chat agreed with all of our takes, and the fact that we all agree that the thing that you have to do is move on from Mike McCarthy after a cataclysmic failure really does kind of suggest that is the best thing in the interest of this team, even though it's unfair. On some level, it's unfair, but it's just the name of the game at this point in time. And he had his chance, they had their chance, and they blew it. Yeah.
No, agree. I mean, I feel like I've kind of been arguing, this whole time, and we're all just kind of waiting to see what happened. And I think we waited and we saw, and I think we're a lot more aligned now with it. And sadly, this is not the destination we were hoping for.
By the way, I wrote an article about this that'll come out later this week. The last two significant coaching decisions the Cowboys made, moving on from Kellen Moore and obviously moving on from Jason Garrett, both of those decisions were announced or reported a week after they were eliminated during NFL games. So in 2019, when the Cowboys missed the playoffs, it was a week later when the Eagles were in the middle of their wild card loss to the Seahawks that the news came out that they weren't going to bring back Jason Garrett, even though that was really obvious. And last year, it was right as the Eagles had won the NFC that the word came out that they were moving on from Kellen Moore. So I would, again, if history does repeat itself, there would be some sort of report or rumor or whatever on maybe Saturday afternoon during the Packers-Niners game, but we will see.
I want to say one thing, though. I don't
Fine.
think this is going to happen with one of my choices. Well, my choices, I tweeted 3 of them this afternoon, and they're all playing still. So, I feel like if the Joneses had their eye on one of those guys, they would be very, very quiet about it. But then once that one of those teams were eliminated, then all of a sudden we'd learn that the Cowboys have interest in, Mike McDonald or something,
they could fire McCarthy, though. You know what I mean? But this weekend, that's all I'm saying. That news could drop. Not that they've hired somebody new yet, to your point.
Yeah, I feel like they'll have things figured out before they even decide to let McCarthy go. I don't think they're going to fire McCarthy without having his replacement.
Well, that would not be abiding by the rules. And the Dallas Cowboys love to abide by the rules. Danny Phantom. So. All right. Are y'all ready to find out who won?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're ready.
This was tight. This was one of the closest battles we've ever had. 3 worthy competitors. Mike, the Freight Train Poland. Danny, Mr. Fantastic Phantom. But tonight, the prevailing champion by a 3-point margin was the chat. Congratulations for the first time in Blogging the Boys Roundtable history. The
Power
winner
to the people
is the chat. Thank you, Hillary Molly Vegas, for saying you feel bad that I'm sick again. It's really just my voice. I don't feel sick. It's just I'm losing my voice. David Smith, Danny says the sad panda chat wins again. Rick says, yay. Watsamata says the chat wins the pennant. Only caring about the pennant. Who cares about the World Series? Danny, do you want to offer any words of congratulations to the chat, or
No, I don't want. I don't want to offer any congratulations to them. I don't know what they said to earn this. They probably didn't deserve it. I do care what they say. And I appreciate them hanging with us and listening to us and awarding us points, taking points away sometimes for no reason whatsoever. No, that's great and good job, chat. I'm sure what you said was very profound, and it will loom large in what happens this going forward.
Mike, do you want to offer any pieces of advice now that they're winners? You've won roundtables before. I mean, we don't want their head, them to get too big for their britches. I mean, do you want to offer advice how to stay humble?
Yeah, I am going to stay humble, although, because I was second here, so second is the first loser. So, but I will say, power to the people. I don't want to encourage them too much, but they are. So if people want to talk about MVPs, they are the MVPs tonight.
That's a great kind of way to set up the end here, Mike. We're so fortunate to do what we do. It is so cool that people take time to hang out with us. The way that Cowboys fans unite. I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, it's almost 3 a.m. for Mike across the pond, and he stays up to do these from time to time, obviously to watch different Cowboys games because he loves it. I mean, we're all sad and we're all mad and we're all pissed off. But Danny, this team unites us, and that is a cool thing, objectively.
It is for sure. And, we're not the casual fans that are going to just, wrap it all up, pack it up and go home. And let's like, what are we going to do now? This is just, another day for us. We're going to do it all over again. We're going to get excited about free agency. We're going to get excited about the draft, excited about training camp, all that stuff. It's just part of our life. It's who we are. And it's nice to actually share this with everybody and people come in here and hang with us. So, it's sad that our season's over and now we have to talk in past tense, and it's going to be 2024 from here on out. We'd love to have some bonus football. Didn't work out that way, but at the same time, there's always another game coming. So,
Mike, send us home. You can say anything you want, PG-13, but because you have a propensity for other things. We'll just leave it at that. But that being said, it's your way to send us out, Mike Poland.
Okay, I'm going to send this out with one big one that will put everybody on a high to end. I'm going to talk very quickly on the Eagles game. So I'm going to say Cowboys forever, Phillies for never.